Hello horror hounds, welcome to my horror house. It feels a little bit more like Halloween in my horror house today because last night I went to go and see Saw X, and there was a time when, regular as clockwork, every spooky season a new Saw movie would come out. Then they sort of shuffled off to one side and the paranormal activity nonsense took over for a bit. But Saw X is back. It's got some very positive reviews. A lot of people are saying it's the strongest sequel that there has ever been to a Saw movie. I wanted to sleep on it and come to you with a slightly more considered reaction to Saw X than sort of an initial, yay, we got a new Saw movie. I would say the movie is strong but mixed. If you're not a fan of the Saw movies, there is absolutely no way you're going to like Saw X. It's a dyed-in-the-wool Saw movie, and because it's set between Saw and Saw 2, it's also an authentic John Kramer, Tobin Bell starring movie, and we even got the wonderful Shawnee Smith as Amanda in there as well. So this is OG Jigsaw territory. Regardless of where in the timeline you sit, I think the strengths and weaknesses of a Saw movie fall roughly into three categories. The quality of the story. Yeah, there are stories in some of these Saw movies. The quality of the traps. And what I call sort of the penny drop moment or the shoe drop moment at the end when you start getting the flashbacks, the music. The music starts playing and all the little pieces slot together. A little bit like a jigsaw. I think Saw X scores high on some and low on others, and about middling on the traps. Let's talk a little bit about the story, which I think is one of its absolute strengths. We're finding a John Kramer coming to terms with his recent terminal cancer diagnosis, and if you've seen the trailer, you know that he is given this lifeline, this sort of illegal, below the radar medical procedure that he can have in Mexico that has cured others and promises to cure him. And of course it turns out to be a massive con, but the person they've conned is the freaking Jigsaw Killer, so he gets his retribution on, or not retribution as he calls it, you know. John Kramer's learning lessons. These are valuable learning lessons, folks. How much do you really want your right leg, for example? And what it reminded me of most was, I think, Saw 6 in that regard, which is another one of the stronger story ones. I think that's one of the sort of fan favourite sequels. That's the one where the lessons are learnt by the people that work in that health insurance company, the people that sort of screw John over with his health insurance and have screwed a lot of other people over. And there's a sense where some of these traps fulfill a sort of desire for righteous retribution. So Hoffman, I think it is, in Saw 6, under the guidance of the late John Kramer, puts these health insurance folks to the test. And here John Kramer himself puts these con artists preying on desperate and dying people, puts them to the test. And in that respect, whoever's donning the Jigsaw mask, you can see them as a sort of avenger of justice, if you squint and forget that actually John Kramer and his hokey sort of philosophy is very paper thin, very inconsistent at best, and the guy is actually just a fucking maniac. But here we can root for him because the people he's putting in the traps are arguably even worse than him, perhaps, maybe. So the traps themselves are mostly excellent. I would suggest there is one that I think is absolutely top tier that made me wince. These are gory traps. As you would expect, these are grand guignol movies. The visual excess of violence and self-surgery and things like that are what these films are about. And You don't have to make any apologies for liking stuff like that, I don't think. I found myself ruminating that whilst I was watching these, that the absolute platonic ideal of a jigsaw trap is to have someone do as much of the task as they possibly can, but still fail or still run out of time, so we get to see the coup de grace as well. And it gets a little bit telling in Saw X that that's what's happening. It is a little prurient in that regard. You do watch people performing some fairly hardcore self-surgery to a very strict 3-minute timeline that doesn't account for anyone sort of geeing themselves up to, oh, I don't know, take out a piece of their own brain. And so you do have characters who G themselves up, do the thing that's asked of them, but just run out of time and then get killed anyway. It does seem a little bit unfair. I think John Kramer's own idea of his moral certainty is delusional at best. See my previous comment that he's a fucking maniac. Where this film is at its weakest is the penny drop moment. There's no real big turn. We just see a lot of sort of flashbacks to things we sort of knew or suspected anyway. The multiple reveals of Amanda pulling her mask off are no great shakes, because Amanda is John Kramer's assistant, and we already know that she puts the pig mask and the robes on and helps him obtain his test subjects. There's quite an interesting little play with the normal idea that John Kramer is an absolute tactical mastermind. His plan doesn't quite come off in the way he expected it to, so he has to sort of improvise there, which is kind of nice, but it's only something that you understand after the fact anyway, so you can't really enjoy it while it's happening. And the final sort of what I call the game over moment, the game over door slam moment from the end of the very first film, which was one of the very best penny drop moments in the entire series. It's really not there in Saw X. Some of the other strong ones to my mind, I think learning that at the end of Saw 4 that film is happening concurrently with Saw 3 made me go, no, in the cinema while I was watching it, and I loved that. I love the continuity porn of the Saw franchise rather than the torture porn element of it. I love the twisty-turny timeline. So sticking this between 1 and 2 is just quite a gleeful move for me. I'm not quite sure it works, because there are people in the movie who know that he's the Jigsaw Killer, or find out he's the Jigsaw Killer. Yeah, you could argue that perhaps somewhere between the first and the second film, his identity as the Jigsaw Killer, who's been operating for years at this point, I believe, before the first film, has been released. You do have a mid-credit scene that made me cheer and clap simply for the love of continuity in my heart. Fuck it, I'll tell you. Hoffman turns up, and I loved the Hoffman character. I know a lot of fans don't like him. John's on the phone with Hoffman a few times during this movie, and Costas Mandylor gets a tiny little bit of screen time, and I loved seeing it. But what was a real head scratcher for me is they're both hanging around this victim, him and John Kramer, just talking to him. No pig masks or anything, and I was thinking, don't they need to? Certainly Hoffman, doesn't he need to keep his identity a secret? But anyway, part of the fun of the Saw movies is getting wrapped up in them while you're watching them, and then afterwards going, does any of that really actually work? And then asking yourself, does any of that really actually matter? And I don't really think it does. Saw X is one of the strongest sequels, nowhere near the best one, nowhere near, but certainly a strong sequel. If they'd have had an excellent penny drop moment, certainly one of the strongest sequels. I think this is a mid-tier Saw movie with a couple of excellent traps, and one that is able to luxuriate in its secret weapon, which is Tobin Bell. as much as I like the Hoffman character, the Saw movies without Tobin Bell, you could see them trying to find ways of crowbarring him back into the movies, and here they've hit upon a timeline placement where you can just luxuriate in. I think this has got the most John Kramer in it any Saw movies, so that is certainly a strength of it. A hell of a lot of fun, a welcome return. I don't see this spinning off into 2, 3, 4, 5 more movies, but hell, we're at Saw X now, so what the hell do I know about a franchise that kills off its totem in the third movie?
I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.